Hello and welcome to the CX Files for October 11th, 2024. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan I'm still in Tokyo finishing off my trip, Mark, as we were recording this, but I will soon be back in Montreal.
Yeah, well, as we teed up last week's episode, we said that we were going to have a debriefing on your Asia trip. So actually, you are the guest this week because you've just been hopping around different places in Asia, and we both thought that it would be a good idea to get some feedback from you, especially on what's going on in the Philippines right now.
Yeah, exactly. And, Mark, it's interesting because one of the reasons I went to the Philippines was to conduct a talk to the Call Center Association of the Philippines event that they organized. With me in mind as a speaker. Now that happened in Manila, and it gathered together roughly 30 or 40 CEOs or managing directors of outsourcing organizations that were operating in the Philippines. Now, the basis of the talk was not just a market update, where does the BPO market sit globally, but it was also what does the Philippines need to do if it's going to compete effectively moving forward. It was a fascinating discussion from the standpoint of the interactions I'd had with individuals who were in the room. The questions that were asked were incredible. And one of the things that really came out of the talk, I think, is the fact that there is a desire for the Philippines to almost reintroduce itself as a BPO destination to the rest of the world, and certainly a motivation amongst the stakeholders in the room that this needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know that you do your survey every year and you look in detail at different locations. And certainly this year, India, Philippines, and South Africa, I think, were the top three. I got those in the wrong. It was India, South Africa, then Philippines, I think, wasn't it this year?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And, one of the interesting things is that it does feel like there needs to be some level of reintroduction for some of these places. South Africa is, over the past few years, they've had all kinds of different problems with infrastructure, with the
Yeah.
electricity supply, things like this. But on the plus side, they are very switched on in terms of the IT industry. So as CX moves away from the idea of the warehouse sized contact center and more towards a mix of agents plus AI, that positions South Africa very well. And I think that's the problem the Philippines has got, that they've been doing this for so long. That everybody sees them primarily as a low cost destination for BPO. So once you start bringing the tech and the AI into it, perhaps it doesn't feel like the first natural location for that kind of work.
Yeah, I think that you're raising a very good point. South Africa is a really good example. They have had their challenges, as you mentioned, with infrastructure, with political uncertainty. That seems to hopefully have solved itself, at least for the time being, with the coalition government that's been put together between the DA and the ANC. But definitely a lot of societal challenges. That said, they've been exceptionally good at representing themselves around the world. And this is one of the reasons I think that South Africa has really emerged as one of these top three countries. Now, the Philippines retains a lot of value, Mark, but as I pointed out in the discussion that I had with the CCAP leaders, it's very clear that a lot of this is based on legacy perception, that it's an inexpensive location, that it's a great place to do front office voice-based work. But the reality is in the Philippines, they can do so much more. They can do a tremendous amount when it comes to back office, when it comes to value add CX services, when it comes to technology and the work that goes into CX tech. Where I think that the country has fallen down maybe the past few years is they just haven't taken that message to the rest of the world, focusing on their core demand markets, whether it's English speaking locations like North America, like the UK, Ireland, or Australia, New Zealand, even Singapore. So what I do have a sense of, though, is that moving forward, there is going to be a collective effort on the part of the different stakeholders in the Philippines to make some adjustments to figure out what they need to do to drive an international marketing and promotion campaign very similar to what's happening in South Africa, and to develop that level of awareness so that organizations that perhaps are looking for a new offshore destination might not have had the Philippines on their radar, might not have had them on their short list. They want to change that.
Yeah, yeah. And what's your impression? I mean, after being there just now, to your experience recently of India then? Because normally these two destinations get kind of lumped together because, you know, they're both very large markets. They're both very outward facing markets, especially to the US as clients, you know, both predominantly focused on English speaking. So, you know, normally they're kind of grouped together, but do you see any big differences emerging now?
I mean, I think that one of the things that really stands out for me is that India has put a real double down on non-voice support and being a location of choice, if not the location of choice, for things such as web chat, such as email, social media management, etc. Um, and this is not to say that they can't do voice in India; they can do it very well. And the improvements around quality over the course of the past 15 years have been exceptional. I think with the Philippines, their sweet spot has traditionally been, as I mentioned, voice English support, which is perfectly fine. But as we know, voice as a channel is declining year on year in terms of the proportion of interactions that are being supported by enterprises and their outsourcing partners. We also know that voice as a percentage of total workstations, voice only workstations is declining as well year on year. So what the Philippines, I think, is going to need to do to distinguish itself and make sure that it stands out in the market, so it's not lumped in with India or lumped in with any other country as being perceived as a legacy English language frontline CX support destination. The impetus is going to be focusing on what the organizations, whether they're locally owned or maybe it's international organizations with an outpost in the Philippines, they're going to need to demonstrate that they can do a lot of these different elements beyond voice, such as that non-voice digital support, such as perhaps some of the more consultative type elements that come into the whole CX element now, helping organizations manage digital transformation, helping their clients work to implement different technology solutions, working to try and help figure out what the customer life cycle is going to be. There's so much raw talent in the Philippines. You spend time in Manila, you, like I stayed at the Peninsula Hotel, and it's a veritable who's who of BPO executives coming back and forth, some of whom live in the Philippines, some are just visiting. But the point is, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of talent. It just needs, I think, to be molded into what I was saying should be Philippines BPO 2.0. And if that can be done, then there's no question in my mind that the country will renew itself as an outsourcing destination and thrive.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that the difference between the way that South Africa has really promoted itself and really kind of invested in marketing itself and getting analysts to come down and write about the destination. Because it's actually been years since anyone invited me back to the Philippines, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with one. Well, we've got one of the most popular CX podcasts globally. We're both writing extensively about the industry, but nobody's invited me out to one of the big conferences out there. So certainly I haven't had any reason to go out for clients either. So I just haven't seen it for a few years on the ground.
And this is something that I pointed out when I gave my talk. I indicated that South Africa is actively bringing influencers in and out, whether they're analysts, whether they're consultants, whether they're journalists. In fact, there's going to be a visit in November that a good number of our friends and colleagues are going to be on. Georgia has done several of these visits. There's talk about other countries that are organizing them in the Caribbean, in different parts of Africa. And yes, exactly. It's been a long time since anybody has invited any influencer or any analyst to come to the Philippines. And as you say, Mark, I think very succinctly, unless you're going to bring the influencers, unless you're going to bring the potential investors or the clients of potential BPO investors out there, they're not going to get the critical mass that quite frankly they need and that they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, maybe just to wrap up then, your point about the focus on voice is interesting, because I think that there's going to be a big change. I think 2025 is going to be the year where we start seeing a lot of digital assistants really coming into their own. Certainly Amazon is about to upgrade the Alexa system, which, it's been around for about 10 years, but now they're going to put proper conversational AI into the system. So, you'll be able to say, hey, Alexa, can you find me a hotel in Paris tomorrow night for under $200? And it will go away and do the work for you and make the calls and search. And I think that once we start seeing those services like Siri really becoming useful and taking customer service kind of legwork away from the individual customer, then we will see the BPOs will have to sort of react to that and create their own kind of digital interface as well to the digital assistants. So I think that, we are seeing a gradual shift away from voice, but I think that there could be a cliff edge as well at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's better to be prepared for that cliff edge than not be prepared for it. And this is why I think what's going on in the Philippines with this rethinking about what the value proposition is from a global BPO perspective is going to make all the difference as they look to try and compete with current investors and those who are fresh to the country and looking for a new destination from which to house outsourcing operations.
All right. Okay. Well, let's wrap up there and go to, you can go home from Tokyo, and next time
Yeah.
I'll be speaking to you back in Canada, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to getting home. Have had a great trip in Asia, but yeah, definitely when you know that you're flying out, you just want to get on the plane and get back.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have a good flight then.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.